There's no doubt that Kubernetes is attracting a lot of attention these days. Yet, not everyone feels ready to start using Kubernetes, even after understanding the basics. This bootcamp will help you to get a better understanding of what comes after your hello world in Kubernetes. Because let's be honest, Kubernetes learning curve is overwhelming. The ecosystem appears to continue growing more and more each day, and there are too many concepts, tools, and practices. Your initial introduction to pods, deployment, and services were just the beginning of a fun learning journey. We'll start by doing a recap of some Kubernetes core concepts, but we'll go deeper into different terms as well. The idea is to understand what it takes to build and run scalable systems in production. There are design patterns that you can implement in Kubernetes to extend an existing application without having to change the source code, like a sidecar pattern, for example. An important topic we're including is security, and it's because of a simple reason. Kubernetes is not secure by default. There are many considerations that you need to be aware of before exposing your applications to the public internet. For instance, encrypting secrets with third-party tools like HashiCorp Vault. Companies usually have existing security policies for their workloads, so we'll cover how these security practices apply in Kubernetes ecosystem as well. Then, we'll also cover how to extend the Kubernetes API. There are times where we need to extend the Kubernetes API to operate systems more easily. Not everyone will need to build something to extend the Kubernetes API. But it's very valuable to understand the what, when, and how of a custom resource definitions or CRDs and the operator pattern. For instance, we'll use Vitis to deploy a scalable MySQL database in Kubernetes. Which, speaking of databases, we'll cover how to build stateful applications in Kubernetes. Stateless services are great for certain use cases, but there are scenarios where an application needs to be able to store data permanently, or at least work with data that is not ephemeral. Databases are one example. Understanding how networking works in Kubernetes is important. For instance, it will help you to configure networking patterns like service discovery for a microservices architecture. But another concept that is taking more relevance are service meshes. We'll explore what a service mesh is, and we'll practice using one of the most popular ones, Istio. Kubernetes has a lot of great features built in by implementing the controller pattern, but in many cases our applications need to include small configurations to help Kubernetes make better decisions to support reliable applications. We'll see what changes are needed in the applications, and then we'll deploy and test a sample application. Lastly, Kubernetes doesn't have to change the way developers build applications, but they might want to be involved in the deployment process, or test in their local workstations when they are done with their application changes. We'll discuss some recommended practices and tools, for instance, how to do Canary deployments in Kubernetes using Flagger. But you know what? I have a small demo with Flagger, let me show you. So the example that I'm going to use is gonna be the one that you see in the screen here, which is in a traditional architecture or deployment in Kubernetes will be composed of a deployment object and a service object. The deployment object will be the one used to group the pods, and the service will be the one used to expose the deployment to either internal traffic, or even if you're running in a cloud provider, you can expose this into a public service load balancer. So notice that after I have deployed several things in the cluster, like for example Flagger or Istio, Istio comes with the Prometheus and Grafana, and I'm going to use Prometheus because Flagger will take metrics from Prometheus based to do automated checks of the application if the new version is working correctly, so the release can continue. And you can see that here is a specific object or a dedicated object for to handle the Canary deployments or the Canary release. And you can see here that is going to use a new deployment that is going to have the new version of the pod or of the deployment. So what is going to happen right now, when I deploy the changes, is that the service will, or the user will start hitting or will continue hitting the service or the URL that it's been hitting as always. But the difference will be that Flagger will be sending traffic for the existing version and some percentage to the new version. And while this is running, it will start sending or emitting metrics to Prometheus, so that Flagger will be checking metrics here, and based on that knowledge or based on that data, will be defining if the release can continue or not. Goes as expected, it will start progressively sending more traffic to this version, and when everything is working, this version that is being tested here, it's gonna be updated here. So this will be just a temporary solution or a temporary deployment, because once everything is working correctly, Flagger will take care of getting rid of this and will update this, and the service will continue hitting as it's been working as always, and the new version will be here. The reason why we're doing this is because we want to automate the deployments in Kubernetes without downtime, and making sure that as we send more traffic or more data or progress with the deployment, the users won't notice it. The users, if for example there's a failure in the deployment, Flagger will be automatically roll back the change, and only a small percentage of users will notice that something happened. So that's the beauty of it. So I'm gonna go to the console and I'm gonna show you a few things. So notice here that the simple application of WeWorks for this is kind of funny, where it has something here. Notice that it has a text of the version that is currently running, and you can see that the application is changing or being updated constantly here to indicate which version again is running in one deployment and the Canary deployment, and which pod is serving this traffic. So you can see here, you can see ping here, like forcing the update here, but it's basically doing this. So I already have some commands here that are running, that I'm watching the pods of the current deployment that I have deployed, which is the 3.1.0. And notice that everything is working, everything is running as expected. And I'm also have a watcher here for the canaries, which is going to be a custom object, or in this case, Flagger is extending the Kubernetes API, and is included. And I have deployed previously a canary object into the cluster. So notice that the last one that I did, or the last deployment that I did, was succeeded, and everything worked correctly. So what I'm going to do right now is to send some traffic or simulate some traffic. The good thing about Flagger is that it has an option with a command like this. Is going to create a new deployment in the cluster. There's a typo here. It's going to create a new deployment in the cluster, which is going to be in charge of sending or simulating traffic to my application. So notice that it's going to start creating the object here. It's gonna start running, and you can see that everything continues still working, but this pod is sending traffic under the hood to my namespace here. So what I'm going to do right now is to deploy a new version, which is going to be 3.1.1, and I'm gonna do something like this, and I'm gonna enter. So notice that something will start happening here. It will start creating the new deployment that I was talking about before, and it will start doing something here by sending the traffic. Notice that it's going to create the exact 2 copies of the new deployment, which is going to be the Canary deployment, and Flagger will start sending traffic to this and these deployments. And what it's going to do is to start with 5% initially, then 10%, and 50%. And as it continues evolving the deployment, you will see that it will start changing something here. Maybe it's too small, the traffic right now, so that we can notice that something is happening. But as this continues evolving, you will notice that something will start changing here. But while that continues doing the deployment, let me show you what is happening under the hood. if you start taking a look to the events, you will see that it will start doing something here that is going to be advancing the deployment by changing the weights of how much traffic will be sending to this existing one and to the new one. And remember what is going to do Flagger is that we'll check metrics from Prometheus, and if everything continues as expected, it will be changing the percentage of the weights of the traffic. So notice that this is the new version. This is the one that I'm deploying, and it's gone because remember I am not sending too much traffic to the new version. But if I continue pinning here, you will see that you see the new version here. And I'm gonna pause the video here because what is going to happen as this progress and this continue doing the deployment, it will start stopping it will start terminating the Canary release, and it will start changing or updating the new one so that everything will keep with the new version. So, well, I didn't have to pause the video because it's creating the new version. Is going to do something here because it already finished. As you can see here, the weight is 0 because it says that it's promoting. So what it's going to do right now, it's basically a mix of a blue-green deployment, so to speak. Notice that it's going to be terminating the previous version, and it's going to be rolling out the new version of the deployment as you will normally do in Kubernetes. But the difference with Flagger is that you have more control and you can define how you want to do the rollout using a Canary release and automate this part. And notice that almost all the traffic is seeing now the new version, the 3.1111. And Flagger will start cleaning up the mess here. Will start terminating the previous pods here. Then it will delete the Canary deployment. It is taking some time because it's doing things slowly so that you don't lose too much traffic here. You don't make the users to suffer. Like, I mean, they are not gonna notice that something is happening. As you can see here, we haven't seen any error here, and it's as you can see here, is terminating the Canary deployment. So basically that's it. So let me show you one last thing is when you define this in code, well, because we are working with YAML objects, with YAML definitions, you can see here how I'm defining a new object of the kind Canary, and the version or the API version that I'm using here is the Flagger one. So I'm gonna introduce here some details here that we can take a look in slowly during the bootcamp. But what I want to show you here is that it's going to be you can define here the interval of how many seconds or minutes you want to wait before switching the traffic again. You can see how many health checks will have to fail before I do a rollback, and what will be the increment of each change in the traffic that Flagger will do. You can see here which is the name, what is the name of the metrics that Flagger will use to say that everything is working as expected. And this is the webhook or the load balancer or the request that is going to be performing while doing the check or the automated check. And I included here this because you can do or configure A/B testing as well, not just Canary releases, but A/B testing deployments as well. So you can see here that I spent more time in the console doing some exercises explaining you these concepts, because that's how exactly is going to be the bootcamp. The bootcamp is gonna be practical. You're gonna well, of course I'm going to spend some time explaining you some concepts here, but it's gonna be full hands-on. You have to have previous experience with Kubernetes, and ideally with the CLI and with Linux system. So that's it. See you there in the bootcamp.